Hello, and welcome to The Melting Pot Dishes on Its Perfect Night Out, a one-to-one media Take 30 webcast. I'm Mila D'Antonio, Editor-in-Chief of One-to-One Media, and your moderator for today's event. Today's speaker is Mike Lester, President of The Melting Pot and a 2014 One-to-One Media Customer Champion winner. Welcome, Mike.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for joining us.
It is my pleasure to be here.
Let's move on to today's agenda. Today, Mike is going to discuss the Melting Pot's methods for encouraging employees to adhere to its service standards and focus on guest satisfaction, his approach and philosophy for aligning the organization around its customer-centric standards, the tenets of the perfect night out service policy, and some real-world examples of employees who have really gone above and beyond for individual customers. So we're excited to hear those. So in an effort to stand out from the competition, the Melting Pot promotes the perfect night out, which really blends attentive service with four-course fondue dinners. But the initiative isn't just about combining food and atmosphere. It also empowers employees to go above and beyond expectations by putting guests' best interests first and delivering service in any way necessary. In an effort to enable this, Mike really encourages employees through constant communication and ongoing training to read individual guest behavioral cues to provide an experience that's tailored to their preferences. So Mike, given this background, because the Melting Pot strives to be very customer-centric, can you first discuss what's at the core of this methodology, and does this start with the executives?
It absolutely starts with the executives, and really what is at the core is what we learn from our guests and through constant communication and constant conversation that we have with our guests through a variety of mechanisms. One is through our in-moment online survey system where we collect just a plethora of information about the opportunities that our guest tells us that we have and the things that they tell us that we do really, really well so that we don't change those. We do a variety of brand and consumer-related research, focus groups, quantitative studies, and also qualitatively, I make it a point every single year, myself and my Vice President of Operations, as well as other executives in our organization, visit numerous restaurants through every year. Last year I visited a third of all of our Melting Pot locations, and my goal is to do that every year as we move forward so that, I can, and when I visit a restaurant, it's not just a, hi, how you doing? I like to stay during the evening. I like to work with the servers. I like to work with the managers. I like to talk to the guest from the restaurants all over the country so they can really see how the decisions that we make here at our Restaurant Support Center affect the guest and our team by how they can implement those policies and procedures that we set out.
That's interesting. So what is the value of really rolling up your sleeves like that and working alongside the employees when you make those visits?
Well, I think it allows you to see more than just theory, and often at Restaurant Support Center or any corporate office that you might have with the chain restaurant environment, you really spend a lot of your time in theory. But where the rubber meets the road is how that theory equates to reality. By seeing how those decisions are carried out and the effects that they may have, whether positive or negative, on the experience of the guest, then you can really make sound decisions as you move forward.
Makes sense. So how do the chain's customer-centric initiatives get translated and communicated to all of its employees regularly?
Well, a variety of methods, of course. We have operational updates. Anytime an operational procedure is tweaked or updated based on modern consumer demand or preference, we have operational update. We have a very extensive training program for all of our team members. Serving tables at a Melting Pot is not an easy ordeal because our servers are both servers and almost chefs, if you will, as they prepare a number of courses at the table for the guests. So, their training is paramount to the success of the Melting Pot. So, updating training materials and doing things like changes at a glance, recording videos, things of that nature. And then, one of the things that we like to do is we like to constantly stay in touch with how we're performing through the metrics that I mentioned just a moment ago, the surveys, the consumer focus groups, the studies that we do. And we communicate those metrics and those performance levels to our our franchisees and the managers and the team members. And often, just shining a light on an opportunity to improve is all that you need to do. And there are examples of that. For instance, many years ago when we first started doing our first online survey, we learned something that actually corrected a misbelief that we had prior, which was around our pace of service. Our pace of service wasn't bad before, but we thought the guests enjoyed a little bit more of a leisurely pace than what they really did. So that allowed us to go back and take a look at it and talk to our teams and our franchisees and tell them with certainty, because of this research, this is definitively how our guests think about this particular issue. By learning that, just that knowledge alone, we were able to make substantial increases in the perception of our guests about the pace of service. In fact, our first metric on that was only 49% of our guests felt like our pace of service was excellent. And today, it's over 70%. That's 74% today. So when you think about that, and really operationally, we did make some changes. We made a few tweaks, but it all came by just shining the light on a potential opportunity and correcting a misbelief this organization had in the past.
Yeah, and I really think it helps when you show employees the hard metrics and let them speak for themselves.
That's right.
So you spoke earlier about how you're visiting the restaurants, but can you go into more details about how you personally are driving the company's service standards and ensuring organizational alignment around the company's customer-centric initiatives?
Oh, sure. So, when we talk to the consumer and the mechanisms in which I communicated before, through surveys and focus groups and through my and other executives' visits and our franchise business consultants through their visits, and also, by the way, through the feedback that we get from our franchise community, our very talented franchise community who are passionate about delivering perfect night out to the guests, and through their feedback as well, we're able to come up with a series of thoughts and recommendations about how we can consistently improve in the future. So one of those things that we did is through these mechanisms we learned a lot about what our guests thought about our menu. They felt, and this is a process we started back in 2011 and 2012, and they told us a lot about the menu. They thought maybe it was a little confusing. They didn't understand the price per couple. Certain couples didn't want to have to order the same plate. So through the various methods to collect this information, what I did is I took that and I made that information actionable. We researched, studied, tested a new style of menu that answers the needs of the guest, and it tested through the roof, and then ultimately implemented that menu in January of 2013. So, and it was a very successful launch, and our guests were very appreciative of that, and all of our key guest metrics have increased since then. So we're happy about that, and that's one of the that's more of a major look at what we did and how we reacted to the feedback of the guests and driving our company's standards. But then almost a micro look at that would be around something as simple as a beverage glass, for instance. Beverage service is important to guests in a restaurant. Nobody wants an empty beverage when they're dining at a restaurant. That's true of every restaurant, not just Melting Pot. So what we found is our guests were not entirely happy with our beverage service. And we found that just with a simple decision of going from a 14-ounce beverage glass to a 20-ounce beverage glass, we were able to positively affect the guest experience really without costing the company any money, because glasses have to be replenished all the time. So just by on the next order having our restaurants order a bigger glass, that helps improve the guest service in our restaurants as well.
That's a great example. It sounds like you're really aiming to create that flawless guest experience, and I know your perfect night out partially enables this. Can you explain what the perfect night out entails and how your employees are empowered to make decisions that benefit the guests and go above and beyond for them?
Sure. Well, I think you have to start with the idea that this goal of perfection is subjective. And that's why we started there, is your definition of a perfect dining experience might be different than mine. And often when you talk about a restaurant and they define a certain set of steps of service, or certain specifications on their food. It is one set of specifications, whether you like that personally or I like that personally. Maybe we both don't like them. Perfection is about customizing the experience as much as possible for the guest and making sure that we achieve their definition of perfection. And also, if you think about the threshold of what it takes to be perfect, that is a very high threshold. We're not satisfied with just guest satisfaction. That's not enough. That doesn't achieve that level of perfection that we strive for. So what we do is to get perfect night out, for me to know what your definition of perfection is in your dining experience at a melting pot, I need to know something about you. I need to learn a little bit about what you like and what you don't like. So through our training material and through our operational systems, there are a number of gathering points where, and often without your knowledge, we'll collect some information that helps us, define and customize a dining experience that you will find perfect for you. And that is really at the essence of it. Now, the interesting thing is you might have a really crazy definition of what perfection is. And I'll tell this story, this example of our restaurant in San Diego. We had a guest who had a really brilliant sense of humor. And on our online reservation system, we asked the question, what other things can we provide you to make your dining experience perfect? And that guest had a sense of humor and wrote some really crazy things, like he wanted a T-Rex origami, he wanted a picture of the Amazon rainforest, he wanted just a list of these really obscure things that nobody would ever ask a restaurant for.
Right.
Well, our management team took that as a challenge, and they provided every one of those, they achieved every one of those obscure requests, and they were on that guest table when he arrived. And so while it was funny and humorous, I'll tell you that the guest walked out of there and was impressed with the level of detail that our restaurant and our team went to achieve, his definition of perfection. We all knew he was having fun, but you know what? We wanted to show him there are no barriers for us. We teach that, and that's what Perfect Night Out is about. We teach people to think outside the box, and we empower them to think outside the box. And often our team members, they don't have to go and ask a manager for permission. If somebody's in our restaurant dining and they're asking for something that we don't carry, but maybe the restaurant next door does, or the retail store down the street does, we'll go get it. There's no question about that. There's no second thought to that. That's what perfect night out is.
Yeah, and in a sense, your team members are really creating customers for life and going above and beyond.
That's right. Some other examples, I just love telling these stories.
Sure.
There was our restaurant in San Antonio, and this was kind of sad because we had a guest that came in, a husband and wife that had arranged for a honeymoon in Hawaii. Not a honeymoon, I'm sorry, an anniversary celebration in Hawaii, and unfortunately they had to cancel at the last minute because they had a family emergency. And, but during that week home, they didn't have to report to work or anything, so they said, well, let's try to, get away from the family for a little while and let's at least go and celebrate our anniversary. And they went to the melting pot, and they told our hostess about having to cancel the trip. Well, that information made it to the manager, Dwayne, the owner. He's our franchisee, and Dwayne said, well, I can do something about that. So he went next door and bought, flower leis and like pineapple cups and different Hawaiian-based trinkets and decorated the guest table. So when they arrived, they had their Hawaiian experience and their Hawaiian dinner for that night. And and more than just winning a guest, you think about this is a couple of people that had just suffered a family emergency. They were under stress. They were certainly saddened by that, and just to know that a business, an entity, a restaurant cared about them enough to go above and beyond and do something so out of the box that it just really meant a lot to them. And we had the opportunity to take somebody who was having an otherwise bad week and really lift them up and elevate them and raise their spirits. I could go on for days about these stories, and I'll just finish with really this last one, which is how we actually named an award after this. This was the impetus of this entire award. We call it the POW Award, which was Pot on Wheels. And what Pot on Wheels is the melting pot on wheels. It's about delivering legendary guest service to the guests, no matter where they are, or what they do, or what their situation is. So the first original award winner of this award was our Minneapolis location, and they talked about a husband and wife who were dining in our restaurant. She was 8.5 months pregnant, and during the very beginning of their dining experience, and they were there celebrating, I think it was an anniversary maybe, during the very beginning of their dining experience, she went into labor. So they had to leave, of course, and they weren't able to celebrate. And while she was happy about the birth of her child, she was sad that she didn't get a chance to celebrate. And so, I think most restaurants would say, well, congratulations to them, and they'd go out in their merry way. What that restaurant did and that owner did, was they packaged up the fondue experience and took it to the hospital the next day after, of course, the birth of their child, and that new mom was able to enjoy her cheese and chocolate fondue from the comfort of her hotel room. It just meant so much to her that we didn't just let it rest with the fact that she had to leave her experience early, that we did something about it. We delivered legendary guest service to her right exactly where she was in that hospital room. And think about the stories that she's going to tell for the rest of her life around that experience.
Yeah, that's the thing. She'll remember that forever. I mean, that really is legendary service. So thank you. Really wonderful. Thank you so much, Mike, for sharing those. So, I mean, to elicit this type of behavior, what sort of recognition and rewards programs do you have for employees to encourage this?
Well, so this POW Award, for which that last situation was named, it is one of our top tier awards every single year at our annual franchise meeting that we have with our franchisees. And what we do is all year long we solicit these stories, and they're submitted as they come in. And let me tell you, we have a lot of fun with them here at our Restaurant Support Center. We have we call it a jumpstart meeting. Once a week we get together and just the whole team gathers in our lobby for about 15 minutes. And every single meeting we'll share one of these stories with the entire Restaurant Support Center and talk and help everybody hear exactly the kinds of Perfect Night Out style stories that are going on out there. So as we collect these ideas, they're collected into a group, and we decide a series of finalists. We invite those finalists down to Tampa, and they are hosted for a really fun weekend, and then they're asked to record their stories on video. At our annual meeting, we show this video to our franchise community, and through a text-to-vote sort of mechanism, our franchise community votes on the best one, and that is the winner of that year's POW Award. And so it's our community voting on it. And, it's just a celebration of all the crazy, legendary, Perfect Night Out style stories that we give our guests every single day. But we take that award and we turn it into a training tool. Those videos now become training. We show those videos in every one of our restaurants. It's a part of every new team member's orientation to see one of the most recent year's video. And so what that does is it helps our team members understand, hey, I may not be in this confined box of allowable resources. I can do things that are not necessarily commonplace. I can think outside the box. I can go above and beyond without having to worry about my manager yelling at me about, maybe spending $1 or $2 extra on doing something nice for the guest. The paper origami T-Rex, for instance, that didn't cost anything. That just cost somebody, their time. And that's it. But it meant so much to that particular guest. So these videos become really great, almost benchmarks, because without them, you might assume as a team member training in a new restaurant that you have to follow a certain set of guidelines and rules. These videos are all about you don't have to follow and you don't have to be constrained with the crazy things that you're allowed to do and are encouraged to do, by the way. Perfect Night Out is not a passive experiment. It's an active search to find things that we can do for our guests that are above and beyond.
That's fantastic. So switching gears slightly, Mike, you're a 2014 101 Media Customer Champion winner, largely because you're focused on guest and employee satisfaction. So what advice do you have for other leaders who may be struggling to move their organizations to becoming customer focused?
Well, I think it starts with listening. Listening active listening, not again, I'm a big believer in the difference between active and passive. Active listening, where you're out seeking the opinions of your guests, your team members. In our case, we're a franchise community. We have a group of very passionate franchisees who care deeply about this brand and providing perfect night out style service to their guests. So active listening, going out there asking the tough questions, being able to take the tough answers, and being open-minded towards the things that are opportunities for improvement, and also being open-minded to not changing the things that our guests and franchisees really like about our brand. So, listening is such a critical part of this whole process. And, of course, we do it in a variety of methods through our online surveys, through InMoment. We get more than 100,000 surveys every single year. About 1% of all of our guests fill those surveys out. And again, reading their comments, they're so passionate about our brand and what they want us to be for them. In our research that we do with the consumers and brand level research, we do focus groups even with our team members. I'll visit restaurants and do many focus groups with servers, for instance, about what they like and don't like about menu items or service steps and routines and things like that. So while listening is such a critical step, listening doesn't do anything unless you have action behind it.
Right.
And I think that's what we do really well in this organization is after we've listened and we gather the information, we make decisive action steps, and then we set our team upon a course to take those steps.
Yeah, you're doing the difficult part very well, the action part.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And communicate. A lot of people think talking is the important part. It is important, but really the action behind it is what makes the talking even worth a darn, frankly. So, we take actionable steps like the menu in January of 2013, like we have our next generation melting pot that we're thinking about for the next 5-10 years. How is melting pot going to be relevant with the consumer of 10 years from now? So we are working on that generation melting pot right now, so that we can take steps to make sure that we resonate with the consumer. We continue 10 years from now to deliver the perfect night out to the consumer. And you don't do that by standing still. You don't do that by not taking action. You don't do that by not listening. And that's what we do.
Wonderful. So just wrapping up the questions here today, what's next for the Melting Pot this year in 2015? How will you improve upon the customer strategy that's in place at the moment?
Well, we are doing a number of different things. Beyond thinking about our melting pot of tomorrow and 10 years from now, that's certainly one of the things that we're doing. We have adopted parallel paths. We are keenly focused on the melting pot of today and our guest of today, because we have a responsibility and obligation, a duty, if you will, to provide our guests today of the perfect night out. But we also have an obligation to our franchisees to provide a solid business model for them, a decade from now, and also our guests to provide our guests the perfect night out a decade from now. So what we're doing are things like that. We're continuing further enhancements to our menu based on guest and franchisee feedback. We are adopting some technology. We're working with tablet-based point-of-sale systems that are handheld by servers, not by guests, but by servers, that answer any number of operational needs and help improve the level of the service that we give to our guests. And things of that nature is what we're doing.
Great. Sounds like it's going to be a fun-filled year.
It definitely will be.
Mike, thank you so much for joining me today. This concludes the Melting Pot Dishes on its Perfect Night Out, a one-to-one media Take 30 webcast. Thanks for attending and have a great day.